Okay, so what about this first problem then? This is from the next assignment, the 1-4 assignment. This is the stuff I talked about on Friday. I think I used the law of universal gravitation was the formula that we used, and we solved it for a variable. So this, on assignment 1-4, mostly what we're doing is we're taking equations that involve more than one variable, and we're isolating one variable in terms of the other variable, right? So we're going to isolate y, but when we get y by itself, we're going to get x's in our answer, right? So that's what that means, in terms of x. So with x's in our answer. So this first one's very simple. What are the steps we would go through to isolate y in terms of the other stuff? So if I get y by itself, how do I push everything else to the other side? What are the two steps I would do? Okay, first I'm going to subtract 6x, right? So step number 1, it's going to look like this. On the left side, I'm going to have my negative y. On the right side, I'm going to have subtracting 6x is the same as adding negative 6x, right? So I'm going to get negative 6x plus the 2 that's already there. Or I could write it as 2 minus 6x. Either way is fine, doesn't matter. Okay, what's the second step? Okay, good. I've got to get rid of that minus sign, right, the negative 1. So I'm either going to divide by negative 1, both sides, or multiply both sides by negative 1. It's easier to think about multiplying both sides by negative 1, although they accomplish the same thing. So if I multiply both sides by negative 1, what do I get on the right side? If I multiply the whole side by negative 1, what does it do to all the signs of the terms? Changes them. Good. So I'm going to get a positive 6x minus 2. Okay? So now, what I've got to do is I've got to input that into this text box right here. Okay, so let's try that. If I go, well, I'll just do it on the computer. So that's a pretty easy one. All I have to do is write 6x minus 2, and that's my answer. But how do I know that that's what the computer saw, that it saw what I wanted it to see? There are two buttons here, display response and check. Check is what it always meant on the other assignments. Check is I'm going to see if I got it right. Now on the homeworks, it's not that big a deal because you can try them over and over again, right? But on the tests, it is a very big deal. On the tests, every time I hit check, if it's wrong, it's going to deduct credit, either 50% or maybe all credit, depending on what the question is. So I want to get used to this display response button. That's a freebie. It does not turn the problem in. All it does is convert it into an algebra view. So is that what I wanted it to be? Yeah, it is. So I would hit check, and I would get it right. Okay? It said correct. Okay. Let's move on and take a look at the next one here. Let's look at one that's a little bit harder. In fact, I might even make one up so we can use some other stuff. Like, what would I do with? Oh, let's do one of these. How about? Let's do that guy. So if I want to isolate h in this problem, solve for h. So there's my h. What are the steps I'm going to go through to get h by itself? What's one thing I've got to do? Okay, I'm going to be doing some multiplying and dividing. What's one thing? The h mean? Okay, do I have to put it on the other side? No, I don't. It's fine. I just want to isolate it on one side of the equation. It's already on the right side, so we'll leave it there. Doesn't matter which side it's on. Okay. Now, in the answer, we can always think of it. When it's by itself, we can always move it to the left side if we want to. It doesn't make any difference. So we're going to leave it there, but what are the things I've got to do to get that h by itself? Yes, sir. Okay, for one thing, if I want to get rid of this 1/3, I have to multiply both sides by 3, right? So if I multiply both sides by 3 for step 1, what am I going to get on the left side? 3v. On the right side, I will have gotten rid of the 1/3, so I'll have a pi r squared h. Okay? Now what? Okay, We're going to divide by the stuff that's being multiplied by h then, right? So step 2, I'm just going to divide both sides by pi r squared, and that's going to cancel the pi r squared. And so after my second step then, I've got h all by itself. 3v over pi r squared. And notice what it says. It says enter pi. I'm just going to write pi for pi in my answer. Okay, but now if I try to put that in, so how would I write that then? If I've got 3v divided by pi r squared. And I have to capitalize the v, it says. Okay, so I'll go capital, so 3 capital V divided by pi r squared. Okay, well pi I just do like that, right? And then r, how do I do a squared? And if you want to, I can put time signs in there too. It doesn't matter if I do or not, but if I want to make it easier to read what I'm doing, I could even say pi times r. How do I do a squared? Caret. Good. So that's going to be the shift 6 gives me that little, it's kind of at the top of the keyboard. That's my power, right? You see something, don't you, Boozer? Go wash your face, please. Everybody like that?
Don't you need to put pi r squared in parentheses?
Ah, okay, yes. Okay. Okay, suggestion was made. Hey, shh, shh, shh. Suggestion was made. Do we need to put the pi r squared in parentheses? Well, let's see what happens if I don't. If I just hit display response, oh, that's not what I wanted, is it? Okay. Now, why did it do this? Because if I'm going to, the computer is smart, it's going to follow order of operations, right? So it's going to multiply. It's going to multiply and divide from left to right, isn't it? It's going to do 3 times v divided by pi. It's going to take that whole thing and multiply by r squared. So if I want to divide by all of that stuff like I do, I need to put the whole denominator in parentheses, right? Okay, so if I go back and make that change, watch what happens. Now let's hit display response, and that looks better, doesn't it? Right now I've got everything on the bottom where I want it. All that stuff, all this stuff right here is on the bottom. So if I hit check, I should be fine. And I am. How about that? Okay. Okay, one last thing. Now, what if I want to do something like instead, let's say I want to do, I'm trying to think of all the stuff you guys would need to do for now. Probably the only other thing is square root. And we're not going to do that for a while, but how do I do a square root? What if I want to enter something like, let's say, the square root of 3x plus 2. Okay, good. If I want to do, squirt is how we do square root, S-Q-R-T. And if I just have to take the square root of one thing, I can just put it after squirt. Like if I want to do the square root of x, oh, hang on. Oh, yeah, x isn't a variable in this. Well, I have to do one of these variables. Square root of, how about r? Okay, see what it does? Is everybody getting this? Okay. Now, what if I want to do the square root of r, and then outside of the square root I want to do a plus 2? Well, if I put a plus 2 here, that's going to work. You see what I'm saying? The plus 2 is outside of the square root. But what if I want to do this? What if I want to do the square root of the quantity r plus 2, let's say plus a 3 that's outside of the square root? How do you suppose I get all of that r plus 2 into the square root? Parentheses, good. So I would just do squirt r plus 2 and then a plus 3 outside, and voila, we got it. Make sense? Okay, so that's going to take you no more than like 2 to 3 days to get that figured out completely. And then it's, I mean, then it'll just be second nature, okay? But it takes just a little getting used to. But remember that display response, that's key. All right, I think we're good to go then. Why don't we head down to the lab? Oh, the due dates. One more thing on the due dates. The due dates, not because of you guys, but because the other classes are a little bit behind us, I made the due dates like this. 1-1 is due tonight, 1-2 is tomorrow, 1-3 is Wednesday, 1-4 is Thursday, which is way more time than you guys need, but that's kind of what we're doing.
What lab?
Uh,